Demba Jimden, Jenjawa, Rajama, Yanda, Rivada, Shazemba, Devare Shevan, Jedin, Jemba, Kalo Java, Lana, Meva, Lada, Menanjet, Sanjay Jimden, Benjawa, Shajadava, Sazen, Roger, Yazawa, Demba Jimden, Dijinjawa, Rajama, Yanda, Wazo, Sanjay, Shazon, Demba, Devare Shevan, Jedin, Jemba, Kalo Java, Lana, Meva, Lada, Menanjet, Sanjay Jimden, Benjawa, Shajadava, Sazen. Chedo Yazo Sheo, Demba Jumden, Dishen, Yandaba Zobia Sanja Reba Shazun, Devaresha Jin, Jamba Jevo, Devakano Java, Tadamen on Jedama Sanja Jumden, Bega Waisha Dobana Chaz, no Chedo Yazo Sheo, Konzekanya Zoe Jadam, Sergeant and None Jeden, and Nacho, Dezekama Joma. Namda Gunga Jodo Susan, Yishi Jato Sejo, Chaba Jiden Sumna Lambe, Gombo Chonye Jama Jahanse, Senjo Demba Chimen Davishe, Sendo Dama Jama Jahanse, the Rejada Seba Sumaji, Yame Jeje Jama Jahanse, Gombo to Jeshe Demba Tam Jeche Bedamo, Sonoma Yende Jazo, the Jensha Lacha and Taben de Jata, giving it on the Jedo Danomisho Java, Jama Jahanse, Lava Tala Rabda, the Shinga Damba the Gilena Yachas. The Vajaya Misha Gavapuzo of Rangas and the Yosu. Tene Sanja Demaye, Garmara Rima, Yamasa, Melano, the Jenda, when the Judge of the Solomon Diatum Jessiva, Yokovantum, the Ginger, Gada, Nada, Shira Lamtru, Sibir Son, Jovan Java Show.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one called beyond. The full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata in all the world, supreme guide of beings to the day, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Shakyakan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Shakyakan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Shakyakan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When a supreme of humans, you were born on this earth, you placed our seven stars and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With the pure body's form supreme pure, wisdom motion like golden mountain, fame that blazes in the three words, we know not the best, to you prostrate. With the supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the three words are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of naked qualities like vast ocean, to you the one called to darkness I prostrate. The beauty which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intended virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning in a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain their rank of seen, subdue the flow of force, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. I go for refuge and get enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and get enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and get enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
I think we are in the stanzas number 1, right? However, for the purpose of the teaching that wise, like those experienced, the wise, like those experienced with the mirror image, being able to clearly realize things, lack of intrinsic reality, are able to understand this, Nagarjuna, able to understand this. Yeah, sometimes you read in the Tibetans, they're very short. says, Kebanam the Sunyala, Kebanam the Sunyala, Keba Taburu, Mubanam, Jimuni, Meba, several conditions, those which are children's. So the wise, understands the things, things as reflection-like, dream-like, illusion-like, right? Something that is not intrinsically not exist, Yeah, in the Tibetan there's this. The wise who understand the things like reflection, things are absence of intrinsically existence. So then now stanzas begin with this. Those whose intellect transcends. So those whose intellect, the two kind of person, one who has, the ability to understand the, dependent arisings or dependent originations as it is, and one who are not able to understand that, settle dependent arisings, So, and what is the reality? How reality really exists, right? How things are really exist, and says beings and nothing. So things do not exist intrinsically. Things are also not a nothing. So it does not dwell in between. Things do not exist intrinsically. Things are also not annihilations. Things are also not a non-existence, right? Not intrinsically exist, but not a non-existence, And there is no middle or the center to dwell, So realize the meanings, who understands the meaning, the wise who has the ability to understand the, profound, the settled dependent originations, meaning of the conditions when they see, when they conceive or get the meaning of the condition, arising, disintegration, the birth, aging, death, just meaning from that meaning, which is profound and non-perceived. So they understands the meaning of the conditions is, free from two extreme, not intrinsic, not a non-existence. Meaning of arising, not intrinsic, not a non-existence. Meaning of the destructions or death is not intrinsic, also not a non-existence.
Geshe, when he says and does not dwell
In between.
What is that?
So, the meaning of the conditions, is it conditions do exist intrinsically? No. So conditions do not exist intrinsically. Is because of the conditions are, absence of intrinsic existence. Does that mean there is no condition at all in general? And we said that is also not true. So all things do exist in between, not intrinsic, not a non-existing, in between. Is there any between the center they can dwell, And they said there is no center. It's just, things are relatively existing is the meaning of absence of intrinsic existence. absence or intrinsic existence means the only way it could exist is relatively. You know, there is no in between. So those who intellect and transcends. So I think so in Tibetan is Kanglo Ye the nevertheless. So like in those who intellect means those who has the mind or intellect. So there's two kind of persons whose intellect is being able to understand the profound, subtle, dependent arising, whose intellect is, lacks the ability to understand the subtle, dependent arising, right? And then the question comes, and how things, do exist in the reality, and then says things are absent or intrinsic, and therefore it is relatively exist. So that is the reality. Now, so one who is, intellect or not intellect, or one who has ability to understand or not understands, the reality is uncreated, and, unproduced, contaminated. Reality is always remain the same, no matter you have ability to understand or not. And then the question here is the people, the sentient beings, people who believe in a creator, people who believe in the natural. Natural means everything comes from the four elements. Everything comes from four elements. Or people who believes in, not the creator, not Bhagavan, not God, right? Rather they believe is the dependent originations. So whoever is sentient being, or people who are totally denied the next life and the future life, right? Next life and the past life. And so all of them, they have an innate desire to be happier and happier, infinite happy. So now the question is that desire, in what condition that can fulfill that desire? So people who believing in the creator or the God, by praying to the God, just by that, can this be the condition to fulfill your desire? And say no. And if you believe everything is coming from the four elements, and they have a desire to be kind of most happiest person, but they also see there is no way you can be happy because the four elements as uncertain. It's like four elements. Sometimes it can disturb the conditions. Sometimes it can balance the condition. There's no certainty in the four elements. Then your desire is always seeking the infinite happiness. But you also see reality is uncertain. There is no possible, any condition can fulfill your desire. But all of them are seeking for happiness. Rather they say there is no possible you can be happy, or somebody says yes, there is the possible you can be happy by praying to the God. Right. So all of them, naturally, no matter how things are, how things are kind of, useful or not useful, but your mind, your desire is always seeking happiness. So now they're saying that, to be happy, to, permanently be happy, right? permanent to happy. If your mind understands the reality as it is, there is no condition that can disturb or to distract the mind. So he's saying, yes, it is possible you can fulfill your desire, which is seeking for the happiness. You can, you can transcend your mind to reach the state of permanent happiness. So now this this is only can possible when your mind understand the reality as it is. So, and then what is the reality? The reality is, free from two extremes. What is the two extremes? One extreme is, exaggeration, like intrinsically existence, inherently existence, truly existence, externally existence. So these are one of the. This is one of the extreme, and and another is if things not intrinsic, which means it is not, not existing at all. Generally, it is not exist, or things are, when things are changing due to the conditions, when things are disintegrating, when things are ceased to exist, and that is the end of the existence. So that is one of the extreme, So free from two extremes, and that does not mean there is something in the center you can dwell. It just relatively exists, intrinsically not exist. Just that. These two are the exactly the same meaning. So for them, those who has ability to understand, ability to understand the nature of the conditions, which is free from two extremes, profound and non-perceivable. So now in the commentary is saying that those who have meditated on voidness or emptiness in the past life have great intellectual talent because of having the potential for seeing the voidness or the emptiness through understanding the relativities. That is the one person, the first who has meditated, even in the past life, many times meditate in emptiness, gain the realizations of the emptiness, and when they seize the condition, they seize the conditions as a relatively existing, which means they understand no condition as intrinsically exist. Even without any extraordinary practice in their present life, so that is part of the first person, even without any extraordinary practice in their present life. Noble Shariputra, now setting an example, who is the one who has, without extraordinary practice in this life, because of the previous life, their potential of understanding the emptiness, the Shariputra and others seem to realize profound relativities. So unsolid, by the mud of the stirred up by extremist constructs of the being and nothingness. although this is not with intellectual scope of naive. So when I read in Tibetans, kantas, one who has in the past life have the experience and the collective knowledge in this emptiness and the dependent originations, when they, they have the seed to gain the realization of emptiness. Even these persons who has so much, potential from the past life, even this life you don't have much kind of extraordinary practice in emptiness. So they can, they can understand the emptiness without being contaminated by any misconceptions or the misinformations. So, and then the example is the Shariputra. So as then the as actions, and here always is addiction, I don't know. Leather nyumo in Tibetan, nyumo, afflictive emotions or delusions. As action and delusions serve as its cause, the world arises causally conditioned. So, which means the world, samsara is something that exists conditioned by karma and afflictive emotions. Just so, the guide proclaim the cause that counteract such action and afflictive emotions. So in Tibetan it says, leather nyumo ta dogyu ten dembera sums. So they're saying that, samsaras is conditioned by karma and afflictive emotions, and the Buddha, who has also taught how to end this karma and afflictive emotions. So I think this kind of related to the informations like in Shariputra and Mangaputra. So that there's a mantra. I mentioned that before. There was a Buddha Shakyamuni sent one monk nearby Shariputra and reciting the mantra, Om Ye Dharma, Hetu Brahmava, Hetu Deshin Tathagat, Hevadata, Tikin Sayu. How's that? Hevadata, Yadama Hetu Brahmava, Hetu Tikin Tathagat, Hevadata, Deshin Sayu. Yadama Hetu Brahmava, Deshin Sayu. Nirodha Mahashamana Yaswahas, which means Dharma means all phenomena, all conditional things are due to cosmic conditions, And Buddha, who has also taught how to end the cosmic conditions, So everything is coming from cosmic condition. Samsara is cause, karma and afflictive emotions, samsara is caused or conditioned by karma and afflictive emotions. And Shakyamuni, the great Samadhi, also taught how to end the cosmic condition for the samsara. So just by reciting the mantra, and Shariputra, when he heard this mantra and he contemplates, he understands the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, we also kind of understand, you know. I think one of the very, the general dependent originations, we also understand because we put the roof on the house. We change the roof because we know if the rain falls, it falls in your house. So to prevent that, we put the roof, right? So if there's a leaking, and we patch. So which means we understand if this is the cause, is the rain, the leakage of the house is the problem. We also know this is caused by something. By preventing that cause, it stops the leakage of the water in the house. So similarly, if the samsara, born again and again, born, birth, aging, death, sickness and death, again in the birth, aging, and the death, continuously, endlessly doing this. If you understand that what is the cause and condition, to cycling in samsara, and Buddha taught, or if you end the karma in afflictive emotions, and it can end this cycling in samsara. Right. So the Shariputras, simply contemplating on this mantra, understand that dependent origination is not because he has so much, extraordinary knowledge, information, educated in this life, is because he has so many times in the previous life he has practiced and understands. So when he heard this mantra, he understands dependent originations, the possibility of the end of second existence. So then, hence the best best bull of the philosophers who proclaim the supreme freedom in which the suffering of life, suffering of the birth, aging, and death definitely do not remain, also declared his realizations. So, kana Tibetan, gada, gubi dungen bineba, tabi chucho te, mawe chucho ti, tabi chote. So now say, mawe chucho. The supreme teachers who also declare there is the possible of, cutting off the birth, aging, death, the suffering and the samsara, which is the liberations. So Buddha also declared the possibility of the liberations, through his own experience, his own realizations.
Geshe,
Yeah.
One question, I'm a little confused. The stanza with bold characters, that is Nagarjuna.
Yes.
And then these ones as action and addiction serve as its cause, the word arise. And those stanzas are written by who? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Chandrakirti. Commentary, right?
Yes, a commentary.
Those stanzas are Chandrakirti stanzas.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a Nagarjuna stanza.
It
This
is.
is not a Nagarjuna stanza. Now, Chandrakirti is kind of explaining what Buddha has said in the mantras, Ye Dharma, Ye Bhavas. So Ye Dharma is all the phenomena is causes and condition. So similarly, this world is caused by karma and afflictive emotions. So in the mantra, the Buddha says, just simply says, Buddha did not explicitly says samsara is due to cause and condition. Buddha says conditional things are due to their own cause and conditions. And then at the second line, Buddha says there's a way to end the cause and condition. Right? There's, nirodhas. There's the way, if things are coming from cause and condition, there's also the way to end to end the particular cause and condition. This much Buddha says. Now Chandrakirti is saying the world is caused by karma and afflictive emotions. He's interpreting that line. The world or samsara is due to karma and afflictive emotions. There's a way to end the karma and afflictive emotions. Right? And then he continues saying that the birth, aging, death, all the suffering in the samsara, right? The end of that is the nirvana that is taught by the Buddha, the supreme teacher, through his own realizations, his own experience. Right? So this is not the root text of the Nagarjunas.
It is a commentary.
It's a commentary by Chandrakirti. They're commenting on the Yadharma that they lined.
Okay, thank you.
So when Buddha only just says simply, Yadharma means all the conditioned things, Yadharma, all conditioned things are coming from their own cause and condition. So, and then says, like tomato, guava, all of them, the flowers, the roses, all of them are coming from their own cause and condition. And therefore, there's a way to end particular cause and condition. So, now Chandrakirti is saying that, yes, this is what you heard, from Buddha. So therefore, the samsara is the one particular effect. This has cause and condition, which is the karma and the afflictive emotions. So there's the way to end that karma and afflictive emotions, which means there is the end of samsara. Right? So that's Chandrakirti's commentary. When Buddha was saying that all conditioned things, not just samsara, the table, house, the country, all nations, everything is, derived from their own cause and conditions. So if you don't want this one, you have to have the end their cause and condition. Right? So I think some people when think, oh, this is Buddha was saying everything is from the cosmic condition, and there's a way to end the cosmic condition for particular things, particular effect, which is you do not want, or which is causing you suffering. Right? So then people may think, oh, this is not really, you know, this is the common knowledge. Even the doctor understands that. The researchers, even the handyman understand. Everything is from the cosmic condition. Their doctor find the diagnose what causes the illness, and they try to treat that. So this is why they call dharma is means. There is no and dharma. There is nothing talking about. How's that? Some many times in the religious textbook there says this is the how's that command of the Bhagavan, and some says this is this is kind of the blessing of something. So Buddha Shakyamuni is teaching also dharma means this is the natural. So dharma means it is the natural identity that is constructed by human beings and emotionals. So it's these days now in India, and many people, the Hindu, they're saying we are not Hindu, we are Sanatan. Sanatan means it's kind of natural right from the beginning. So actually, this was the term coming from the Buddhist teaching. So they don't right now new because of the there's a how I love this. Many people kind of understand the Hindu comes from the language of the term they're coming from the foreigners. So people say, oh, Hindu is not the religion. It is, someone says, where the Sindhu River. So all of them are Sindhu. And then later on the word, what's that, turn into, new kind of, the words like Hindu, Hindustan. So now they say, oh, now we are not going to say, from now on, we are not saying Hindu, we are saying Sanatan. So actually, Buddha Shakyamuni, he always says, dharma, so I think dharma and dharmam sharanam gacchami means taking refuge. I'm going refuge to the dharma, and I'm trying to understand the dharma. I am practicing the dharma. All phenomena are dharma. All phenomena are identified in a single unit. So, in each of the entity, you understand how they, how things are relatively existing, is understanding of Dharma, and constant contemplating and understanding, you constantly contemplate and increases your wisdom to understand the reality, is the practice of the Dharma. And then through that kind of practice, you reach the end of the second existence, which is the Dharma that you take refuge. Right? So I'm going for refuge to the Dharma instead. Because nirvana is also not a product, or nirvana is, I think, like where you nirvana, where you end the, where you end your afflictive emotions, to where you end your afflictive emotions. That is just, it's just a space which is never exist. But you're due to the misconceptions, you thought there is a something, So nirvana, how you end the nirvana or where you end the cyclic existence is the ultimate reality, the ultimate truth. When you find the ultimate truth, there you can find the end of the cyclic existence. Right. I think sometimes when people think that purifications, overcoming negative karmas, or trying to end the birth and cyclic existence. So you thought there is something that you can, what you end, trying to end the cyclic existence is something substantial, right? And where you end it, where you destroy it, is also there's a place that you can throw it away or burn down, right? So so dharma means when you, the ending the karma and afflictive emotions and destroying the cyclic existence is all in that space, absence of intrinsic. You can end all the negative karma and the negative emotional, within the emptiness. You can also find nirvana within the emptiness. You can destroy the samsara within the emptiness. Right? So the purification is also like that. It is not like washing the clothes or dishwashing. You just, throw the dirt on the other side and clean it up and put it other, you are kind of separating two substantial things. So all the negative emotions never goes anywhere. It just disappears in emptiness. It is, superimposed by your mind, within the emptiness. Right? It is almost like you're trying to tie the nuts in the space all the time. That because you have trained your mind, you have influenced your mind, and thousands of life. And there's something in the space. Now you try to untie the nuts within the space. So nuts disappears within the space, nut ties in the space by the mind. Right? So I think this is why so the being and nothingness does not dwell in betweens. This is what is saying that, through letters, through the languages and the concept, we construct like condition, arising, disintegrations, or past, the present, the futures. We also construct the relations of the cause and effect. So, now they're saying that, the relations of the, relations, for example, relations of today's the Friday and Thursday, relation of the Thursday and Friday. So conceptually, it is reality. Conceptually, it is through the language, Yes, there is the relation Thursday and Friday. So because the Friday happens because the Thursday had happened. If the Thursday, did not happen, there is no Friday morning. The Friday is going to be end. Therefore, there is the certainty of coming Saturday morning. So the Saturday and disintegration of the Thursday has the relation. So it's with the language, with the concept, with your imaginations, there's a relations. That relations has the meaning, it exists. Now the question is, what is that relations? Is it substantial? It is something exists in and of itself? Or is just mental projections? Now saying that hypothetically, if the relations of the Thursday and the Friday, which exists objectively, then how does it look like? How can you find it? Where can you find it? Can you find the relations of the Thursday and Friday within the Friday, or within the Thursday, or within the between? Right? Because the Friday and the Thursday and the Friday, the relations exist. They exist where? So there is nowhere you can find. So therefore, the relations, that is the one of the knot that ties in the space through the languages. Similarly, the past, present, futures, if you try to single out and try to pinpoint, there's no way you can find the past or the present or the future. But relatively, you have a construct in your mind. So those kind of each of the unit that is separately existing is only in your mind. So that the mind is the one who ties the night. Mind is the one who construct. And where you construct, just in space, there's nothing. Because there's nothing, then easily you can construct. Right? So, so when you untie, when you dismantle those nuts, again you have to go into the space, absence of intrinsic. And there you can find all the nut, disappears, not existing. That is the understanding with the ultimate truth. And opposite of that is, now you see, you can imagine, you can see, it means to you something. And with something that means to you, which means you have grasping on each entity, in a single unit. So when there is, things are, all the meanings, all the entities, appears in a single unit, in each means to you separately, differently, right? So which means you can, you have emotional to like or dislike, right? So then there is the emotional, negative emotions, and with that emotional, there is the action, speech, and physical actions. So all the physical action and speech coming from or derived from this mental emotions. Mental emotional is actively the grasping what you have projected in your mind. So if this is the cause and condition for, the endless suffering, and there's the way to end that cause and condition, because you can, you you just try to analyze, examine, or objectively analyze each of the entity disappears similarly, exactly similarly within the space. So that when the mind understands, through the language and the concept, construct so many entities, each seems to have a meaning to you, and all of them are actually not exist at all, and all of them disappears within the emptiness. So then, that kind of impact on the mind, not to grasp, not to fixate on those, So that is kind of, the way to end the cause and condition for the suffering, right? Right now, every day, sometimes happy, sometimes not happy, sometimes disappointed, sometimes regretful, guilt feeling, sometimes, kind of feeling like failure. It's all without those imaginations, without those mental concepts. You cannot, within the minute, there's no possible you can change. All the tables, the house, the paintings, they don't change that much. But your mind, all the meaning to mind, instantly changing. Or this is what makes you happy, and another angle you know, oh, this is not really good. So that within the 24 hours, the mind is restless, chasing, their own projections. It's because of that, by chasing, giving a meaning, and holding tight, and that makes you really, mentally very, insecure, uncertain all the time. If this is true, and there is no, if this kind of the way your ordinary mind sees the reality, if that is the true, if that is the true, and then it is when the Buddha says there is the permanent state of bliss, and all the noble Nagarjunas and the Chandrakirti is saying there is the possible end of all suffering. There's all life. So so realize the meaning of the condition, which is profound. If you understand the dependent arising, if you have understanding of the dependent originations, means relatively means not intrinsic, not inherent, and with that kind of wisdoms, actively associating or underpin your mind, when your mind think about the condition, that condition too is not intrinsic. When you think about the time, that time is also not intrinsic. Right? There is no such thing intrinsically exist. But relatively, I can say, I can indicate the meaning from coming, or from going, from gone. So I can indicate the meaning. At the same time, I understand those are not, intrinsically exist. Because, the one, the not intrinsically existing is giving me the perfect understanding of relativities. Relativity is perfectly, gives you the understanding of not intrinsic.
And then Geshe, all those meanings are shared in a culture through their language.
Yeah.
And create this feeling of reification that every word it is the reflection of one object, that it is there solely.
So the words, the terms it's kind of reflects what you have, translated, what you have construct in your mind, right? Yeah, maybe we can simply analyze like conditions, as I mentioned. Condition means how do you really define the condition? Condition means there's the activity of the cause, which is trying to catch or trying to give birth to their effect. So that is the condition, right? So the conditions to give you the picture of the cause and the effect is actually one-to-one communicating. In the reality, it is impossible. No Bali seed has ever communicated or contact with their sprout, right? So conditioning is giving you the perfect picture of the coexisting of the two things. Like carpenter making the table. So the conditioning is also giving you the cause and effect, coexisting, simultaneously coexisting, and one is, communicate to the others. That is also impossible. So because of that is impossible if you put this in the physically and substantial, if you try to kind of, for example, it's objectively ground, you're trying to land this to the physical level, there is nothing you can see. If something is doing, we say that's maybe my eye has a problems. I'm seeing, illusions. But it is okay in your mind, mental consciousness. It is not okay at all to the eye consciousness. The condition, the meaning of the condition, it is not okay at all. It is not true at all to the eye consciousness. No eye consciousness ever witnessed this. But for the mind, it is okay. Right? So which means the mind is kind of engaging in the way, in a certain object, which is impossible to the sense of perceptions. So, but still, mind says, I'm going to destroy eyeball. No, it never says. Because I cannot convince the eye, so I'm going to destroy the eye. Eye says, I'm going to destroy the mind. No, they don't really fight. Because this is the way of, the mind is the only way it can engage to the object, is, projecting, fabricating, constructing. This is their, the way of engaging an object. So from there, the meaning of the condition comes. From there, 3 times, the past, present comes. From there, the relation of the cause and effect comes. So this Now here, objectively, we negate the meaning of the conditions, but we are not totally annihilating the meaning of the conditions, because anything that effect, that arisen, the manifest, happened in the present time, has some causes and condition. Something happened in the past, therefore this happened. This sprout is happening because something already happened in the past. So from there, I said, we are not totally denying the meaning of the condition, but we have denied or annihilated, or objectively negated that the cause and effect ever communicate through the coexisting. Right? That we can negate. That is called intrinsic relation. There is no intrinsic relation. So, in the language we say all the effects comes from their own cause. So that the language gives you the pictures. Body sprout is coming from the body seed. So, which means to you, grammatically, you are there in the past. The body sprout was there in the body seed. So therefore, it is coming from the seed. So even if you have never been there, if you never lived there, if you never exist there, how can you come from there? Right? We always say, I'm coming from the past life, going to next life. The language is giving you the pictures that you was once there in the past life, and that you means to you this live person. Now the present was there, sometime in the past. If the present was there and sometime in the past, so what is that present? It is still the present or not the present, right? If the present cannot exist in the past, how can you say the present is coming from the past? Right? So like, you've never been Japan, you never lived there, you never stayed there, you never see them in Japan, but how can you come from Japan? But language is giving you that. So this is according to Buddha Balita, this is the way the mind tying knots in the space, and that visible to you. It is, obvious to you. What are those obvious knots in the space? And your mental construct, mental projections. Within the mental projections, you have a meaning. The meaning of the condition is there, relation of cause and effects there, present coming from the past is there, present going to future is also there. So now that kind of total, dismantle of, the meaning of all conventional reality, total disappearance within the ultimate space. So that is the gateway for the liberations. And then more importantly, when you gain some kind of intellectual understanding, yes, all this conventional meaning can be once total disappears, non-existing in the ultimate space, but still it is not annihilating the conventional. So that is the perfect balance in the true truth, right? For example, if I use a theory to, to destroy the existing of the color in the substantial, right? The color in the substantial, which means, if I theoretically disapprove the color never exists, independent from the eye sense power, or independent from the light and space, right? So, which means, from the point of view of that theory, the color never exists out there to be something that is target, to you can pinpoint. There is no such color. But that cannot disapprove. When I open the color, I see the color. That cannot be destroyed. So that is called relatively. You can experience, you can see, something reflects in your eyeball, eye sense power. That we are not going to destroy, that we are not annihilating that. But we are simply saying that seeing the color is color, which is seeing is not independent from the space and lights and form and eye sense power. And color also not dwell on the pre-existing in the light, space, eye sense power. So not pre-existing in there, you're not there in each of things, not in the collections, but altogether there's something, something called color that you can see it. So if you annihilate, insist that color is not existing because I cannot find objectively, so that is kind of what you say, because you see the contradiction of conventional and ultimate truth. Conventional and ultimate truth is like, two independent dichotomy, right? So the conventional and ultimate is not two independent dichotomy meaning of the object. So they are same because of the relatively, therefore not intrinsic. Not intrinsic, only possible to be existing is relatively. So same time, similar things, you can also destroy the notion of the sound being traveling in the 5 elements or the 4 elements, right? And you said there is no sound that independent from the, the wave of the elements. The wave means, and they're talking about the vibrations of the element. Sound is not independent. Sound is not traveling on the elements. So you can destroy that notion, but you cannot destroy the air sense powers, the hearing the sound. Relatively, it can hear the sound. Yeah, and also I mentioned like it's, speed of the car. So mosquitoes cannot, compete the speed with the car. But the mosquito in the car is speeding at the same time. So, right? So which means mosquito find there is no speed. And speed is also not on the ground. It's relatively there is a speed. So speed is not intrinsic. Right? If you see the boats, the ground and the car and then you see the speed. No. So it was that by simply listening to this frequently, the quoted verses, the noble Shariputras realized reality. So therefore, the intelligence of such beings transcend perceiving. Such beings transcend perceiving being and nothingness by the sheer force of former practice. So the Shariputras, his first knowledge of absence of intrinsic existence or the settled dependent arising, the sheer force of the former practice, previous life, Nor does it dwell in between, since there is no center apart from the true extreme. So, but we still, language we say it's the middle way, but there is no in the center, because the true extremes are non-existent. When you true extremes are non-existing, the middle is also not non-existing, right? So, but the wisdom that understands different originations, when it's free from true extreme, you can say, therefore, that the wisdom that understands the different origination is the middle way, but it's not in the middle of the true extreme. But it sounds like in the middle in this true extreme. The wisdom that understands, free from true extremes. The wisdom is free from true extremes. The wisdom is in the middle.
Like a different.
Yeah.
different things. I wonder why this Loizzo, he translate all the time centrist instead of middle way. Why he use? Have you seen that he always translate anytime that show middle way?
He must be a very educated person. He must be a very knowledgeable person in the language. So he can hear and write it down.
I wonder why he use all the time centrist.
I think he himself contradicted. Previously he says center. Now in the translating Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, explicit, there is no center. And he also says there's no center.
It's kind of why he chose to use that word. But it is more confusing than middle.
Maybe he was paid. So, since there is no center apart from the two extremes, since it produced fear in the naive childish beings, because they cannot fathom it. So, if we talk about within the Buddhist school of thought, Mindfulness school, Siddhanta school, when the Nagarjuna says, Chandrakirti in the Buddha Bali, negate intrinsic property. So this is, it is not really, for them it's meaning or total annihilations. Emptying the intrinsic properties, total annihilations. But they could not really digest that meaning. So it is profound, since it is intrinsically uncreated, unarisen, madhyama, so uncreated means unarisen, and it cannot be objectified. The mental constructs either of the absolutistic and the nihilistic extreme of being and nothingness, or of relief, what's that? Reified center. So therefore it is non-produced, the statement that such noble individual realize the meaning of the conditions means that they, cultivate the intuitions, realizations, in other words, the direct intuitions.
Geshe, direct intuition, direct realization. Is it?
So Bhagavad-gita Genji-tanga Nenjoba Gom as a number of Gomba Shevani Ishim Musum Shecheva Tazigos. Bhagavad-gita, in the Tibetan it says as in the English translation it says Shivanam Jibra. For the naive or the childish beings, it caused fear, right? Someone who could not understand total absence of intrinsic existence, So that for those people, when the Nagarjunas negate the intrinsic property, that causes the fear to them, which means for them is annihilation, non-existence. And Juba Minube, Teran Ju Minube Sabavos. So the why is profound means ordinary people could not understand. When they try to understand, when they interpret that meaning, it creates fear to them. It causes them afraid. They could not bear the meaning of that. So this is why it's profound. Ranshi di mikebe yoba de mebe ta us nyozo tabi us mebe mirume shir miba meadows. And then that is not intrinsically arising, not intrinsically arising, not a non-existence. And there is no in the between and the center, total, kind of beyond of two extremes and the center, which and the noble beings who is meditating or abiding in that, ultimate truth is talking about. It means that noble beings, their wisdom that is directly observing in that emptiness, that is totally free. Their mind is at the time totally free from the true extreme. So it is, which means their direct realization emptiness. Yeah. So this, when you find this little bit kind of, when you read this, you find there's there's something lacking, more informations. So this is the great scholar, when they write, the meaning is so profound and so convincing. They only need few lines to write down. For them, meaning is already there. So people who keep searching, they write so many lines, so many pages, but still, after they finish the page, and the meaning disappears in their mind. So. Yeah, so the meaning of the tradition means that to cultivate the intuitions. Yeah, it's before there's the statement that such noble individual realize meaning of the condition means. So noble beings, their understanding is through intuitions or the direct realizations. Yeah, so it's kind of like here, when you look, as I mentioned, theoretically, when you disapprove the existence of color in and of itself, the substantial level, and so from the point of view of that theory, there is no possible, the proof of color to be existing from that theory. That because the theory is negating, or it's only negating the independent existing of the color. From the point of view of the theory, there is no any theory, or there's no any proof of color to be existing. So that, from the point of view of that theory, is no proof of existence of color, and eye consciousness, seeing directly color. So there's no contradictions in saying this. There's no contradictions. From the theory, you cannot prove of color to be pinpoint, but with eye, it seems that I can pinpoint the color. So now the question is, do these two subjects contradict? So if you find the contradict, which means you have not understood the true truth. If you understand, yes, the way I see the color with my eye is relatively. From the theory, finding no proof of existence of color is not intrinsic. Not intrinsic, therefore, when I open the eye, I can see the color. Color that see with my eye, So, so I think it's uncommon experience of my eye consciousness. So the color that reflects in my sense power is not reflecting in your eye sense power, right? The color that is, that reflects in your eye consciousness or eye sense power is not in my sense power. But the color that reflects in your eye sense power reflects in my sense power, conditioned by the space and lights and air, the common condition. So this is why I say I cannot say the color that reflects in my eye was there in the air or the space or the form. And then, which means we have one thing, one single common color, which is independent there. Before both of us not born, the color was there, waiting for you to see. So that kind of uncommon, as a common color is not exist. The specific, what I mean, and not talking about the general, the concept of the color. Color that right now I'm seeing, a color that right now it reflects in your sense power. Because the way it reflects, when it reflects to my mind, my eye sense power, it is not reflects on you. What you reflects is not in the reflex of my mind, my eye sense power. The condition is this air, this space, common condition. Right? So one of the uncommon condition is my eyeball and your eyeball. For me, with the color has to reflect on that. So now the Prasangika school is saying, whatever that reflects, the color that reflects in your eye sense power, other than that, there is no color to be existing. There is no color that you have seen. So which means what you see is not independent from your eye sense power, is not independent from the space and light and form. So the main point is total, not intrinsic, not pre-existing, not objectively groundable is the main, main thing to be tried to understand, and that is the only gateway for the nirvana. So those other than the noble being who have serious misperceptions are unable to realize the meaning of the relativities, subtle relativities. For they presume that the mere term relativity means intrinsically real creations. In other effort to find a reason that proves intrinsically real creations and to contradict the whiteness or advocates these Buddhas, realist, right? So when I read the Tibetan, it says, those other than the noble beings, or noble Papa Mayimbe Shinjalogis, Papa Mayimbas, other than the noble beings, other than the one who has a realization, direct realization, emptiness, their mind is obscured or overpowered by this misconceptions. Therefore, when they try to understand the dependent originations, they could not realize as it is. Those other than noble being, their mind is contaminated or obscured by the misconceptions, strongly, powerfully overpowered. So when they try to understand the dependent originations, they could not realize as it is. As it is, you can also say, interpret that like noble being, right? Other than the noble being, understanding dependent originations, are not like the way the noble being understands. Because noble beings, when they directly realize emptiness, with freedom, free from misconceptions. Tension when Juman Danny get on City Jawamba Chamber. Tombani the Maula, Chilgo and Tetember, whatever, so therefore, Tension the term of the dependent originations, the word of the dependent originations, the meaning you have misconceived, not understood as they are, for those who try to understand the emptiness, try to understand who is against that understanding for the meaning of the emptiness, for them, need more effort to contemplate, to study. Now, this is kind of whole commentaries trying to explain, teach based on these first verses. Those whose intellects, the two kind of, so intellect who has powerful wisdom to understand the dependent originations, who has, poor wisdoms, still trying to understand dependent originations. And then it says, one who poor wisdoms understand the dependent originations, and so there's many ways they can, sometimes they against the absence of intrinsic existence. They find argue, dispute on that. And and for the noble beings, there is no doubt, because they experience, from their own direct experience, they understand emptiness. There's no doubt, there's no argument from there. And people who trying to understand the dependent originations but could not understand as it is, they have still doubt, and they're not 100% sure, not convinced, but still they kind of trying to get closer to that meaning. And some, they find the dependent origination is total annihilation. They bring the arguments, So now Chandrakirti says, which means those people who has tried to come closer to that meaning or against that meaning needs many effort to train their mind and more study. Yeah, since it is rational persons who perceives relativity and can examine whether it exists or not, noble ones who contemplate profound relativity with intellect that transcend the construct of being and nothingness. Being means existing intrinsically and total non-existence. Transcend from two extremes. True extreme cannot do so without having some sort of perpetual object.
Perception.
Huh?
Perception.
Perceptual object. So they're saying the rational persons, logical thinking, but still they lacks this, direct realizations. And so therefore, they try to understand the free from two extremes. And that still, they could not really catch the meaning without perceptual object, without any intrinsic substantial. So they cannot say this is, if nothing object, so I cannot say this is exist. Yeah, I remember that one time in the Mind and Life discussions in the conference, one of the scientists says, if there's no objective, and then say, we scientists cannot say this is existing. And then right away his own is, response to that. Then how do you explain the time? He says, oh, you got me. The time is not objectively, So, but they cannot deny the existence of the time. So perceptual objects, for if relative things were held to be absence during realizations, held to be absence during realization, then like the horn of the donkey, so this is how they argue, horn of the donkey, they could not be perceived, and this would, invalidate the theory that mental continuum arrives here from the previous life, and proceed from this life to another life. So now they're saying that this is what even the intellectual, theoretical, perceptual. So when they try to understand the Nagarjuna's point of view of the dependent originations, they says, if there is no intrinsic property, objective, so I cannot really, cannot believe there is something like cause and effect. There is a previous life and next life. There is something continuum from the past life to this life to the next life. Because the 12 linked and dependent originations is, it's all kind of destroyed or shattered. Because if nothing intrinsic, as well as explanations of the relativities and the 12 links of the dependent originations, which extend over three lifetimes, means to show that unbroken continuum of cyclic life involves that, conservation of the actions patterned across the lives. It would also invalidate explanations from the treasure of pure science of the aggregates. So the Asanga's text and Vasubandhu's text called Treasure of the Pure Science. So they are talking about, Pumbo to come the Geshe. So they're like
aggregates, the constituents and impermanence and unconditional phenomena. So each, the separate definitions of the characteristic, of the phenomena. Because the phenomena, some phenomena are unconditional, some are conditional, some are impermanent, some are, conditional suffering, some, kind of is a temporary cessation of the afflictive emotions through the concentrations, single-pointed meditations. Some are permanent, the cessation of afflictive emotion through the wisdom. So there's each characteristics. So if nothing intrinsically exists, so we cannot just follow this kind of teaching. These teachings, indicates there is some kind of intrinsic property, because each object, each character has a different meaning. Right. So this is the, so then the life's continuum of the life, the media in elements. So media and elements, and with their specific and general properties. Specific and general properties. So, for example, we say the elements in the outside of the air, we say just generally it's air. Now, the air that I breathe in and out, which is affecting on my elements, and it's also affecting on my sense of perceptions, we call the constituents of the element. The heat outside is just the heat. The heat in my body is called constituents of the, fire element. So it's kind of, there's a property, a general and specific property. But now this saying that, this means there's some kind of intrinsic property in there. The air heat in this body, it is conditioning your sensory perception. It is working under the karma and afflictive emotions. And outside air, the air there's just, moving the trees and leaves, and these are not under the employ of karma and afflictions. So they're not angrily moving. There's not attached, with attachment it is moving. It is not get jealous in the moving. Air that breathe in and out sometimes with anger, with attachment, with jealous. The heat that is produced in the body by anger, attachment, compassion, many things. So it is not the same. The heat in outside, the heat in this side, inside, it is, there's some specific, under specific cause and condition it is functioning. So now this person is saying that, yes, I kind of understands, accept the dependent originations, but the dependent origination means totally none in absence of intrinsic, that I cannot accept. Because each phenomena, they do have intrinsic property. Since they exist, they are valid, therefore the relativity exists. As such, let me explain.
What I see, Geshe, just to try to understand emptiness conceptually, using concept, there is a point that it is impossible.
Huh?
I'm saying that I understand the position that if you stay only in the conceptual, in the rational arguments, trying to understand dependent origination as an object of study, it's impossible to really understand emptiness. Because, I mean, the thinking always needs an object, and the object has to be there. It has to be, they have kind of, it has to be there, otherwise you cannot think. You cannot think about something that it is not there.
I think this is what
it's a difficult thing.
There is the mind way to follow the logic.
Yeah.
So some minds, yes, it is following the logic, and at the same time, there's some kind of flavor from your assumptions. So the mind who is actually using the logic and following the logic without flavor from the assumptions, you think it's not making sense to me. So I have to add all the time some kind of assumption in it.
Something, yeah.
So this is one of the intellectual, intelligent person of their way of investigating or examining. One says, I don't really care how things exist and not exist. Whatever the logic has proved, I go with that. Yeah. So the pure, open-hearted, and it takes the guts to follow the logic purely. Wherever the logic drives them, they just go and accept it. There's two things. So this is why the people who try to understand the dependent originations, one always think that, he is smiling, so he has specific cosmic condition. That means he has an intrinsic nature. He is, he's not, showing very friendly. So there's some kind of, specific cosmic condition. So that means there's some kind of, that means that is intrinsic. So intrinsic, what do you mean by intrinsic? How you really, define that intrinsic? So this person says, intrinsic means to me something from their own side, from their own nature. Something, behave differently. This is not from my projections. It's from their own cosmic condition. So, for that means I feel that if this has a certain cosmic condition, specifically, changing things, and only one thing, not the other, means this has its own mind. It has its own purpose. So that is called inherent, intrinsic. So now it says, what is the thing that is, what is that thing that is not following or there's not following or acting under the cosmic conditions? We say there's no such thing. Flowers, the winds, the fires, everything is, functioning under the cosmic condition. So everything is intrinsically existing, everything is inherently existing, because everything functions from their own cosmic condition. Right. So then it says, if this is what you think is the intrinsic, following its own cosmic condition. So now here I'm saying that, I think best to, to experiment is the color, sound, smell, taste, textures. So yes, the color to be exist depending on the many causal conditions. Does that mean color has its own intrinsic property? Can color exist intrinsically? If the color can exist, it's from its own intrinsic, its own essence. So does that mean color is existing in and of itself? If that is the case, can you also prove the color where it comes from? Where was the color before you see? If you can prove, then I can say color does exist by its own essence. If the smell and taste and the textures have some place to pre-exist and then appears the sense of perceptions, then we can accept that all the sensory perceptions, sensory objects has its own essence to be existing. Other than the things dependent on cause and condition means that exact meaning to us is not intrinsic. Because under some certain cause and condition, something appears is exact meaning for not intrinsic. It's always relying on something that is not itself. Under some some other factors, something appears, something showed, something something appears. For example, if I say, so we say when someone is standing, standing out there, we say, can you face to me? So which means he was not facing to me, showing back to me. I want him to show faces to me. If the showing face is intrinsic, right? So he turned and he says, I said, oh, he showed face to me. And he also, before he was kind of facing other side, he also thinks I'm showing face to the other. So the showing face or showing back is a dependently, the person who is behind, is not showing face. The person who is in the front is showing face. So someone going and coming is also like that. Under the conditions, you can identify this person is going, right? So if you are in the house and someone left the house, you say he gone, he went, he is going. If you are waiting outside, you say he is coming. So that coming and going, both done by the person himself. Then you can say it's intrinsic. So the person become going and coming and depending on two things. One who is inside the house is gone. One who is outside waiting is coming. Relatively it exists. This is why it's relatively existing and depending on the cause and conditions, depending on the many factors, therefore it is not intrinsic. So I think that's the So when in any of those intellectual peoples who is doing, their investigations, trying to find the meaning, and some people, always need their assumptions, their flavor, to approval to something that I have found something. Some people, without assumptions, whatever the logic, the method, mathematicals has established the pure, that meaning. This is what it is. Right. So the Siddhantika school and minority school, they also try to understand the dependent originations and emptiness, but they always think that absence of intrinsic is equal to non-existing, because their assumptions, they could not let go of that assumptions of the intrinsic property. Yeah.
Yeah, we have at least I do, the tendency to replace one view quickly by another one.
Yeah.
That you want to establish like the explanation of the entire reality. And then you fall again in creating a doctrine with
Yeah,
you.
the more from the children, for human being, for the childhood, like 8 years, 7 years, they don't have much this kind of flavor.
They don't.
More you grown up and got adult, and you have so many interpretations. This mean that, this mean that. So
I think it is the difficult part. The psychological part of not need to replace one with another one. It is not the point.
But Nagarjuna is not trying to go back to the childhood state. It's just trying to go beyond your mental projections. What is there? How can, by reaching there, how much it can impact, how much it can change, how much it can bring the peace in your mind. If there is something that you can go beyond the language and term, the more you go and more reveal, the more profundity of that, the space like empty. And if this can change or impact or pacify your emotions, so it is not just kind of, temporary treatment. It is mental convictions, So temporal treatments, you can just look at the ocean. Some people say, oh, that's great relief there. And looking up in the mountain, there's relief there, So they cannot just hold their hat and just 24 hours to this ocean, right? But it's a temporary treatment. And just, but, I say, theoretically or logically, try to place your mind in that ultimate space, not one time, constantly. So then that can, brings the great change, subdue, tame your mind.
And also at the same time, I see all these analysis of different views, all of this, that it can, sometimes I feel very confused, very lost. I don't see the light at the end. I think at the same time, they really help because they are taking you to that edge that prepare you to have a direct intuition.
Yeah. I think that loss is also the good result of analytical thinking.
I think it's very important. Yeah. Give you a solid foundation to whatever is going to come.
Because your loss means, now you have there's a renounce from the ordinary, everyday perceptions. You could not trust on the everyday, perceptions, the assumptions. And that's maybe you could not really purely hold on that pure meaning of emptiness. Therefore, you maybe there is lost. That loss is good, many times lost is many times good.
Patience.
because you are introduced that long-time friend. You are introduced the long-time friend is the only enemy that many times he has deceived you. And now you cannot trust on the long-time friend, and then only one good friend, and sometimes you cannot find him.
May the precious body mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that bone of no decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious mind, realizing emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that bone of no decline, but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings afford their happiness, and may all their realms be until forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. This is sacred and surrounded by small mountains. You are the source of hope and happiness. O powerful Geshe, remain in this world into samsara.
Thank you.